And hello everyone! Hey, welcome to the ComicBase Livestream. I'm your host Pete Bickford. I am going to be talking for the next hour or so about all things comics and comic related, and well, and comic base related actually, as well as some industry news and talking about some cool stuff happening in summer and beyond. Anyway, if you are new to the whole thing, please check out the chat over on YouTube and please put any comments you've got into it, and we will hit as many of your questions as we possibly can before the end of the show. Let me just do a quick check here, make sure that all our settings are good to go, and then I will close some windows so that they are not as distracting to watch while the show is on. Alright, closing that, and I think we're just about ready to rock and roll. Okay, let me pull up the show notes because that's really important when I do these things because it actually helps me try to keep things slightly on track. Alright guys, alright, let's see here. First of all, let me also, okay, I've got the graphics all queued and ready to rock. We almost had this thing prepped exactly on time, but not quite. We continue to endeavor to improve the show, but we'll see what we can do. All right, guys. Hey, hail to Jet City Comics. We'll hit your question about the sale question as soon as we can. We'll have some news for you on that one. Hail Gregory, Andre. Good to see you again. And hope everyone else is doing well. So, anyway, let's see. Let me get to the thing here. Before you get too far into the whole thing, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button on the YouTube thing. It helps move the algorithm to actually send the notification out to all the rest of the subscribers, and that helps us out here. And also, I just would remind folks that we do this show every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central Time, and please tune in. So whether you get the announcement or not, at least you'll know that we're trying to get the word out. So, all right, let's get down to it. In ComicBase news, there's a very minor build 1822 that was just posted. So, for those of you who like reading version numbers, it's 21.0.2.1822. We usually just refer to these things by the last set. They're just for all the hipsters in the house, just to move things along. Some very minor changes on this one, but it's a pretty big deal if you haven't updated in a couple of weeks. If you haven't updated in a couple of weeks, we did manage to slip in a update last week, I believe, or it might have been just a touch before that, where we managed to improve the speed of barcode scanning by just a couple of orders of magnitude. So it's much snappier when you're adding books to the program. If you haven't done so already, please go to my account and registrations, download the very latest build. If you're running anything of the 1600s or 1700s series, update that one. I think you'll dig it. Worth doing. Also of note, we have a massive content update coming down the pipe this week. It was like one of those things where you're staring at the figures and you have to double check them. It's like, wait, is that digit in the right place? Yeah, we are going to be pushing over 10,000 new magazine updates alone. It's going to send us sailing past the 1 million items mark in the database itself. And we just got incredible amounts of contributions from folks, including, I believe it was Robert Wood sent us almost the entire run of the British Medical Journal, which is just awesome. I mean, you literally can imagine Holmes and Watson sitting around there, and and Watson is browsing through the BMJ as Holmes solves the case. But this is an actual real thing that ran since, I want to say, 1840, and it's now part of ComicBase, so that's pretty cool. And of course, obviously, everyone else has been doing just incredible amounts of work feeding us new content, and our editors have been working their butts off, getting on top of all the latest listings and content and so forth. So this is a big one. Get ready for it, and we're going to try to push it tonight. We didn't manage to get out before showtime, because it's actually taking so darn long for everything to sync, but we will try to push it out later on tonight. So it is a day early, and look for it. I hope you dig it. Let me just do a quick hey to Jeff over things. Right on. Just picked up the last Ronin number 3. Very cool. Oro, hey, how's it going? And Greg, how's it going? All right, so other things that are happening in the world. So the update coming out on Wednesday, that is a thing that might continue. It's still usually been a Thursday night kind of deal, but our distributors, those who are left, have actually been doing a decent job of getting us our books a day earlier than they typically had been doing, and so it's a decent shot we may be able to have books posted for Wednesday nights instead of Thursday nights in the future. Let's see if we can make this happen a couple weeks in a row. If we can, then it's a good thing, because anything that gets us ahead of New Comics Day is a good thing for helping make the indexing easier. So yeah, we'll keep you posted on that, and we'll see how it develops. Other things that are interesting. Let's see here. No, I already talked about that, so I'm going to just scroll on down. In entertainment news, you guys have probably seen the Eternals trailer. It finally came out. Shot in 2019 for the most part. This thing was, project was meant to be the fourth wave, ushering in the fourth wave of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's just, this thing has just been the bad news bears, not the movie, because that thing was actually popular. This thing has not been a blessed film in terms of the movie gods have not smiled upon it. It faced all sorts of script challenges. They're working with a very large and very diverse cast. Emphasis on the inclusion, diversity, and all the rest of it is and so forth. A Chinese director that has a way of actually saying true things that piss off Chinese overlords when talking about her, experience in repressive regimes. So as a result of saying how, yes, growing up in a repressive regime, other things reminder of that, caused the film to it will not actually be released in China at all, and it's coming out. Then was hit in the face with the other major export from China, last year. With as a result, has been delayed. It hopes to, it was originally due to be reshot, re-released. In February of this year. Looks like it's set for November, and they just finally dropped the trailer for it. It's the first time anyone's seen a frame of footage of this darn thing, and honestly, fan reaction, not great. I would recommend checking out the Critical Drinker review of it. Honestly, it's probably ironically, despite his name, it's one of the more scholarly and lucid takes from the fandom about it, in terms of what works and doesn't work from a cast and writing plot point, standpoint. So anyway, that's coming up in November. So yeah, something to look forward to, I guess. Other things there, obviously the biggest news of the day is MGM and Amazon sealed the deal. Amazon is buying out the famous movie studio, or what's left of it, for $8.45 billion, billion with a B. The main thing, they're picking up things like Handmaid's Tale and James Bond, massive movie library. I mean, MGM is just one of the most storied studios ever. But funny thing is, it's really become a shadow of its former self in recent years. Its glory days were right at the start of the film era. It was one of the big five Hollywood studios. It has since been cut up, bought, sold, so many times since then. It had kind of a regrouping in the 60s, where they got some things rolling. I mean, it's had a few hits, but it's had more than a share of misses, and it was for a movie studio that was very much counting on making about 5 films a year, and if one of them made a ton of money, then the whole thing would keep rolling. But then they went through a lot of years where, they'd have a really, really big film, but then they'd make 4 massive and very expensive flops, and that was enough to just. This thing has been bleeding red ink forever. It's been it's been in bankruptcy at least once, probably was sailing towards a couple times. Bought out by a consortium of Sony and a number of other folks, largely to keep Blu-ray supplied. And when that format was making its thing, and it's kind of been treading water for about 10 years. Anyway, Amazon just bought it up. It was the latest effort to compete in the streaming wars. So this is giving all of Amazon's subscribers a excuse to spend that $119 a year for all the good, for everything else that Amazon's doing. It gives you a much better reason to do that in terms of your Prime offerings. So we'll see how it goes. Not a major comic, take on this whole one, although it's just interesting to see how much the entertainment is consolidating, how quickly that is. I don't know that it has any impacts on anything that's really, really close to home for us, but I think we all love the pop culture, and honestly, we want to see as many good movies and interesting things out there as we can, so it's good to watch this stuff. Alright, so let's see here. Oh, Greg has says, I need to get back to submitting my Malt Advocate magazines. Greg, I was actually, I was subbing for the editors one day when that came in. I was happy to see that because I'm also a beer brewer myself, so that was actually kind of cool. Let's see here. Oh, and Pete noticed that searches for magazines on Atomic Avenue are working again. Okay, good to know. All right, yes. We actually did. There was a slight bug on Atomic Avenue that got fixed. It was kind of sporadic, but it had to do with issue numbers and stock levels. If things weren't properly filled out, certain searches wouldn't fully propagate when you started typing in names like Doc Savage was the main offender on that one, where you could type D-O, and you'd see Doc Savage amongst the list of names. But as soon as you typed like Doc space S, it would go away again. And then if you typed more, it would come and go. Anyway, that's been resolved. It was one of these things where like, okay, that was weird. As soon as we saw what it was, we were like, okay, it's fixed in 2 seconds. But, some of these things are just strange. Okay, back to other industry news. The other thing that was interesting for me, at least, is the Microsoft Build conference was this last week. So Microsoft Build is when Microsoft cues in all the developers, like ourselves, as to what they're going to be doing over the next year to make our life interesting and hopefully rewarding and easier, because it's not the easiest thing trying to write software for like a million platforms dominated by Microsoft and otherwise. So anyway, the news in a way was well, I mean, they had a shadow announcement, which I'll read verbatim. This is Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. Quote, soon we will share one of the most significant updates to Windows of the past decade to unlock greater economic opportunities for developers and creators. I've been self-hosting it, curious choice of words, by the way, over the past several months, and I'm incredibly excited about the next generation of Windows. Our promise to you is this. We will create more opportunity for every Windows developer today and welcome every creator who is looking for the most innovative, new open platform to build, distribute, and monetize applications. We look forward to sharing more very soon. So, that's a whole lot of nothing, let's face it. The only thing that's interesting about it is they are hinting at, well, first of all, I found the word self-hosting very curious. I don't know if it was just a slip of the tongue or not, but when you talk about self-hosting, you typically are talking about something that's cloud-related, not something that you would install on a virtual machine or something like that. It's like I say, as an engineer, it's a curious choice of term. But the one thing that the people are talking about is that, hey, so you never said the word Windows 10 anywhere in there. They're talking about it as a new platform. And so they're kind of wondering, it's like, well, is this going to be a next generation of Windows? Is it going to be something Azure or cloud related? Hard to say. Microsoft did release, they called it a news book. It was like a 46-page or 43-page PDF. Scrollable set of text that you can, goes over everything that they are working on, that they are willing to, tell people about. I did link it in the show notes. If you're curious about these things, give it a go. I gotta say, I found it, as someone who does not work on the Azure platform, I found it really, really uninteresting. It was sort of like, wow, there's not a lot here for us. But not that I can see. Maybe your read of it will vary from mine. And if you notice something that you find interesting, please drop me a note. I'd be curious as to your insights on it, because everyone comes at things with a little bit of a different take on it. And at this point, we're reading tea leaves a little bit, but we'll see how it goes. Other Microsoft news: Windows 21 H1 just dropped. That is the first half release of Windows 10 version 20 for Windows, for the year 2021. And the features, I looked down them, it was negligible. Literally, there was next to nothing in the feature list. You could mention everything that was new on about 3 bullet points. If you had a Windows Hello camera, which is a special Windows camera that will do face recognition so you don't have to type up passwords. You can just open up your laptop and it will recognize who you are. Apparently, there's a little better handling for that. It obsoleted the first iteration of the Microsoft Edge browser, which I don't know. Well, I know it's not my prime go-to browser. I don't know if it's yours. And they got rid of, or they're getting rid of, the personalization synchronization. So one of the things that Windows 10 would do is if you had your desktop set a certain way on one computer and you logged into your Microsoft account on another computer, you'd notice over time that your desktop would sync up with your main computer. So if it would change up, like your background images and stuff like that, they would actually match each other. Well, I guess that's going away for reasons unspecified. So, wow, whole lot of nothing. So, why am I even telling you about it? More or less because, in addition with the killing off of Windows 10X, which they did a little while ago, Windows 10X was meant to be a stripped-down version of Windows for dual-screen devices. You guys might think of it as the bigger, better version of the failed Windows Phone platform. They are starting to leak words about, I think it's called Sun Valley, but it's the codename for Windows 21H2, which is the second half release of Windows. And that one looks like it'll actually have some stuff in it. That one is actually, it's kind of a big one for us because a couple things. So the one that you'll notice immediately is that Windows apparently will have rounded edges on everything. So I guess that's just a stylistic refinement, but it'll be one that we'll get to see whether it breaks every design that ever happened on every program. But more importantly, it's going to ship with the final version of .NET 6, most likely, and very importantly, it's going to ship with, most likely, these are the rumors that I'm repeating here, the final version of the 64-bit version of Windows 10 for ARM. ARM is the competitor for Intel Silicon that is being used more and more by other devices, such as, yes, this brings us back to Macintosh. So Windows, on the Macintosh side of things, Parallels Desktop has finally gone final for their version of Parallels Desktop for use on Windows, on the new Apple Silicon, which means you can run Windows applications on the new. If you got a brand new MacBook or something like that, you can now once again fully run Windows apps on it, and we care about that because we're ComicBase. We run on Windows. But at this point, to run it in 64-bit, you have to still use the insider builds of Windows 10, and the Parallels guys would guide you through that. But if you don't use that, you're limited to 32-bit builds, which is fine for the main ComicBase. It means it won't run the screensaver, but I'm not sure if you care entirely on that. The 64-bit, though, is clearly where everyone wants to go, and it sounds like by November that'll be fully baked in. So watch, but I think that's kind of the time frame that everyone's looking at on this whole thing. It does sound like they've made good progress on the whole thing, and that things are kicking underway. So it's. I guess it's more for Windows. It's a sign that things are moving in the right direction, but nothing of great moment has dropped yet in terms of actually being able to use the software. So, if you have an aging MacBook and you're looking to upgrade to Apple Silicon, now's not a terrible time to do it. Just, note that you'll be using some, insider build, which means preliminary versions of Windows to run any kind of emulation on it, including for ComicBase. Or if you can get by for another 6 months before you need to upgrade, by then, I think you'll have a more integrated and more fully baked solution to make the move. So that's the status of that. Let me do a quick check of the chat, and then we'll get on to the main program. All right, a new Stargate soon. Oh, wow, cool. Bezos paid almost twice what MGM is actually worth, according to some observers. Absolutely. Yeah, I did a brief look through their financial statements on the to see what exactly were they buying up. I don't know if you guys have this, but one of my dreams is should I ever I don't know, just have really killed it in Dogecoin or somehow just miraculously wound up as a multi-billionaire. I don't know how one does that these days. I don't think Doge alone will get me there. But anyway, but yeah, I'd always thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just get the copyrights or the licensing, just built in for all the entertainment properties that I love. Wouldn't it be great to, so for instance, we for a long time had to beg, I think it was Seagram's, which is the owner company for a lot of music libraries that we wanted to use. And so instead of having to do that, it was like, well, we could just go into the vaults that we would then own and be able to go through that. I was thinking like, well, what movies did they actually pick up? I mean, what's the actual list? And it's, it starts out great, doesn't end great, and a lot of the really good stuff, including a lot of the really iconic things, have been sold off. They've really been looting that company rotten for a while. There's one guy named Kirk Horian who kind of went in and out on MGM. I guess he bought and sold it like 3 times. And one thing I also didn't know ahead of time was I thought that the MGM Grand, like the casino, was part of MGM that they just bought. No, that actually got split off in a separate company a long time ago. So they bought much less than initially meets the eye. That being said, I'm sure Bezos will have a lot of stuff to stream as a result of this one. And frankly, they had the money laying around, so it doesn't hurt them. All right. Let's see here. Andre says the browser Brave is the new thing for now. I actually agree. I love Brave. That is my go-to browser. It's like Chrome. It's fast and it blocks ads very efficiently, and it doesn't spy on you. And I'm honestly, you wouldn't think that'd be a lot to ask of your browser, but it's one of the few that you can say it of. Alright, and Firefox is good for a while. Yeah, I don't know. I've kind of soured on Firefox for a number of reasons. It just doesn't seem to be keeping up for me, but I've been very happy with Brave. If you guys haven't tried the Brave browser yet, www.brave.com get you there? Let me check. I'm not sure with their URL. Oh yeah, there we are, brave.com. They somehow got that domain finally. Check it out. It's, I think you'll be impressed. It's 3 times faster than Chrome, better privacy by default than Firefox, uses 35% less, battery on mobile. Yeah, I find it very useful. The only thing I would warn new users about it is occasionally you'll get sites that they will use pop-ups for logins, and you might need to turn off Brave's shields for that particular site to allow it to do login. So if you start going to a site with Brave and you find that it's you're not able to get a page to come up or something like that, at that point, just for that particular site, disable the login. So or disable the pop-up blocker that's built in. Other times though, when you're like say browsing Facebook and autoplay ads don't come on anymore, you can thank me. All right, moving on. So let's see here. Summertime. Okay, yeah, sorry. Man. You have no idea how chaotic it was before starting the show here. We had a quick handoff of the update thing, so I was updating like 3 versions of software, trying to push content to a server and so forth. So I literally got to my chair. I'm practically out of breath right now because I got settled down like mere seconds before the cameras had to roll. So I'm still kind of like, where is everything? I'm still trying to get my bearings a little bit. All right, I think we're good though. Summertime, guys. So the theme of this one is school's out. Our good, close, dear friend Alice Cooper, who's actually funny thing is, I don't know if you guys have ever heard the Mike Rowe show on him. Mike Rowe does the Dirty Jobs guy does a podcast called I think it's called And That's How I Heard It or something. It's a little bit down the mold of Paul Harvey, and there's a really great one he did on the preacher's son who was like to pretend that he hanged himself, and it was actually the true story of the guy who we now lovingly refer to as Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper, in real life, is a damn near professional golfer. He's a sweet guy and a major, major contributor to the St. Jude's Children's Home, where a couple of weeks ago I had a chance to bid on an original handwritten set of lyrics to School's Out, which is what made me think of it, other than the fact that my own, beloved children are now also out of school. So this is that, as he put it, this is trying to summon up those 3 minutes where you're watching the clock tick off before the last day of school and the bell rings and you're like, if you could make that into a song, he thought it would be pure magic. And yes, that I still think School's Out is like the greatest Alice Cooper tune you're ever going to see until you get into some of the really obscure stuff. But anyway, here we are. We are finally, we talked last week. I was practically giddy with, delight because I'm starting to be able to walk pretty much anywhere I want and not see people huddled up like they just exited a surgeon's convention. People are smiling at each other once again. There's definitely a sense of just, spring and freedom in the air. And it's just lovely to see again. I mean, it just feels like the life is open again. again, and then just adding to the joy of the whole thing. Summer's here, and you can get out and enjoy life with the kids. Around here in Franklin, Tennessee, just outside Nashville, that means a lot of barbecue. Last night we had friends over to just stop by to actually drop tadpoles off that they were scooping out of their swimming pool, and they knew we had a koi pond and we liked frogs, so they stopped over and we turned into an impromptu get together with cigars and and IPAs, and it was good time. So it's like, yeah, this is the kind of time. This is the most wonderful time of the year, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, so I plan at some point before it's all done to hit the beach. I plan at some point to go tubing down some river and and just have a nice lazy day out with friends. And also I'm looking forward to concerts, including, yes, with the great Alice Cooper himself, which I think I even, if I can cue it up here. There we are. That's, yes, he's actually coming to town out here in Nashville. Tickets are stupidly expensive, but I may just find a way to afford them. We'll see. But I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm not the world's greatest Alice Cooper fan. I mean, he's far, far back in my record collection. I'm just overjoyed to see, all the things I love in life coming back again. And live music is absolutely one of them. So let's see here. But anyway, the other thing that happens during summer is typically in a normal year we'd have Comic-Con, and as a result of having Comic-Con for 20, 30 years of doing Comic Base, it's always been the time that we always started queuing up our next release. So with your permission, I think what we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about is what sorts of things did we want to have in our new release. Well, I've already given you a little bit of a cue on the content end of things. So, well, actually, before I even get into that, I want to talk about one other thing, and this will be of some joy to Jet City Comics, who asked at the beginning. I'll go ahead and refresh his. He says, is there a way for sellers to have a sale on the whole store on Atomic Avenue? Well, to answer your question, all right, so there's what you can do right now, which is you can just use ComicBase's mass change command, and you can say, like, let's say I want to make all my comics be 20% off. I can use ComicBase, I can go down to the items menu, I can use mass change, and I can set price equal to price times 0.8. And then what that does is it multiplies all the prices in my database by 0.8, 80%, which then gives me a 20% discount across my entire database. And when I'm all done, I can just set the prices back. I can set them equal to their current value, and they all go back. Now, the problem you've got with that one is you have to find a way of publicizing that to people. So, I mean, it's one thing to knock all the books in your database down by 20%, but how do you let people know? Well, I mean, you could go back to every email of everyone who's ever bought something from you and slavishly start sending notes out to those folks. But I would do a couple other things. The thing you can do right now is you can change your store description to say there's a 20% sale going on now through whatever else. So anyone who browses your store will immediately see that information when they're looking you up. But you know what would be even better than that? If there was some way, I don't know, like at the top of the site, that certain sellers who had really good seller records that, had never caused a lot of trouble for, Atomic Avenue's administrators, who were pretty good at doing what they do, had really excellent fulfillment rates and really excellent performance scores. What if there was a place on the top of the stores that special sellers could have sales on either their whole inventory or just for certain items? And you might have asked yourself, what is that promo code field in ComicBase all about? Well, I'm very much hoping in the next 30 days or so that we're able to answer all those questions for you in a way that I can't quite answer for you right now, because I can only officially speak to the ComicBase side of things until things have shipped. But let's say the next 30 days on Atomic Avenue could be kind of interesting. And hopefully, if things go well, one or two ideas I had that we've hinted at earlier while browsing around Ollie's Discount Warehouse may also become something for the program. So look for that. Should be fun, and let's see how the summer develops, because if we can make it happen, I think it'll be pretty damn cool. So put a pin in that one, but you don't need to wait till November in this case. You just give us 30 days, and we'll see if we can't make something cool happen there. All right. Let's see here. Oh man, Oro says Little Lulu number 12 cover captures the schools out perfectly as well. Let me see if I can look that guy up. Little Lulu. Obviously not the Dark Horse. I assume we're talking about the Marge a Little, Lulu. Number 12. Oh, perfect. Yeah, let me bring this one up. So here we are. Yep, that, yeah, that's gorgeous. I wish I had known about this cover ahead of time. Otherwise, I would absolutely have used this in some kind of ad. You know what? There's still a chance. Oh, and that's in number 13. That's probably what I'll be doing in about a month or so myself, just if I get half a chance. All right, cool. Yeah, Marge's Little Lulu was just the best. All right, moving on. Okay, so back to stuff over here. Talking about ComicBase. All right, well, there's a couple things. So the first thing we got going on, and let me go ahead and get my cheat sheet handy. So I mentioned that we're having a hell of a big content update this week. Between that and the hell of a big content updates that we've been pounding for the last year, all through COVID, I think we mentioned that when we shipped ComicBase 2021, it just back at, I think it was right around Thanksgiving of this last year. We had just the thing we're bragging about is we had, I think it was just under or just over 675,000 covers in it. We, as it stands right at this moment, will have 740,419. I think at the rate we're going, I think we're talking about having added 75,000 covers by the time this, ComicBase 2022 drops, which is astonishing to me. I mean, like, there's such a stupid number of new pictures to add into the whole thing. It's we are absolutely going. We're talking about 750,000 pictures at that point. We're going to have to talk, have some way of making that a visual, because it's just, other than saying it's as many comics as we managed to ship in the first 10 years or 11 years of doing ComicBase period, and we did that in 1 year. That's nuts to me. We currently, as I'm looking at the totals here, at right this moment, if you took all the comics, books, and magazines that are in ComicBase, we just crossed the $50 million mark for the values. You guys might remember at the beginning of COVID, we talked about how excited we were that it had gone a little over 30 million in value in terms of the total, value of the items. That reflects not just how many new items have been added, but also how much the comic market has gone up during that time. As far as the sheer number of issues, we're currently at 935,000 comics, 13,453 books, 47,126 magazines, and that's before this week's update. After this week's update, expect to add, well, something's gonna move up at least a decimal place. Yeah, the magazines alone are, I think there was something like 10,000 new items dropped in there this week. So anyway, yeah, we will this week cross the millionth item in ComicBase mark. But we don't talk typically in our advertising about how many items we have, even though the books and magazines started out mostly as in the comics category. We move them out, but the comics category, I think, yeah, we're definitely we're looking in the area of the 950,000 at this rate. When we ship the next version, we may be, depending on things, crossing or pushing 1 million on that ourselves just by itself. So anyway, we're hitting some pretty cool, sexy numbers on that sort of thing. But content alone is not everything we're looking for. I mean, guys, I am impressed as hell with how much stuff that the editors and you guys are managed to contribute. But we got to do some other things with the program itself to keep it interesting. But anyway, and FYI says, I don't have to fix now. The picture's a little fuzzy, so not much, but noticeable, almost low res. Steve Dazzler says, I assume you're talking about the picture on the live stream. Don't know. I know we're not getting any drop frame notices putting it out, so maybe it's something that we can, if you watch it later on when it's re-encoded, maybe a little bit better. I'm not sure. It's when you're watching the live feed, you're very much at the mercy of the incoming, I think it's called an RTMP server, of how much it's able to process the bit rates for everybody who's live streaming at that very moment and push it out and then get it back down to you, and it can get weird. Sometimes, stop starting your own connection to the live stream helps a lot as well. But later on, the entire video feed gets re-encoded, so if the picture just gets bizarre, feel free to just go back and hit it again later, and usually that's pretty good. But anyway, so in terms of actual features that we're talking about for ComicBase, let's talk about some to start with. All right, we've mentioned this one before, but let's go ahead and cue this one up. Shopify. I'm going to say, especially in light of recent statements that made by the head of Shopify about getting down to work yourselves and acting like a really efficient retailer as opposed to dabbling in woke politics all day long. I am excited to be embarking on an effort to make sure that we integrate Shopify integration into ComicBase. I'm going to say that this is a 98% chance that this appears in the next version for us. It will probably be something that is limited to the archive edition. So I'm interested in your feelings on that. I am interested in differentiating the archive edition from the pro edition a little bit more, and having the archive edition be a little bit more focused on some of the higher end features, particularly geared towards selling things. So, but that is something that I think we're going to release that one not as a separate add-on for people who are specifically retailers, but throw it in as anyone who's bought the archive from us just gets Shopify integration built into the program. So that's probably the way we're going to do that one. Next question I have for folks, and by the way, I appreciate everyone who's volunteered to be a Shopify tester. I will be reaching out to you folks for that. If you guys have been interested in helping out with any of these things, by the way, or getting interested in the other thing, I think, and that did work, that is my email on the screen right now. Please reach out. I'll go ahead and hit it one more time. Reach out to me and say, I would like to be on the insider list for developing ComicBase on the Slack list, and we are taking a certain number of folks that we think might be very helpful, and we're essentially inviting you inside the wall to help us out and chat in the development discussion of the next version. We don't have a cool code name for it yet. I have a couple ideas, but it'll be officially named and launched as an effort quite shortly, as a departure from the current 21.0.x path that we're at right now. We'll start having things that are uniquely for the new version, whatever that is, and that'll start over the next couple months. Probably more like the next couple weeks. Anyway, please reach out on that. I'm interested, as a matter of polling for everyone who's watching the live stream right now, what is your interest level of being able to offer insurance brokerage quotes, or at least hook up folks to look at your collection and give you some kind of insurance quote for what it would cost to insure your collection? Is that of value to folks, or is it just something that's in your way? We've been contacted by a brokerage service that has an API that we could certainly hook into. I imagine it's the sort of thing that we negotiate some sort of finder fee, so we get percent or something of whatever the policy they write. But more importantly is, I don't want to throw things in the program that are just like, okay, great, I get the odd check for a couple bucks, every so often. But if it's just cluttering up the program, I don't want to throw it in there. I want to make sure all the stuff that's in the program is providing active value to folks who are using it. But anyway, if getting hooked up to an insurance guy and basically being able to feed information about your live collection value and say, okay, in order to insure this with X amount of a deductible would cost you X, and if you want to pursue it, here's the email of to forward on your stuff. If that's something that's interesting to folks, just give me a quick heads up. Or if it's like, God, I'm tired of things marketing to me, I get enough of that crap with Norton, tell me that too, because we don't set out to annoy everyone, and honestly, the money is not enough for me to do anything that's going to make the thing stupid. So anyway, so let me know. But that's something that's definitely, while we're busy doing Shopify integration, certainly is something that we've been approached at, and we have the capacity to make happen in the program as well. Other things that are interesting, and here, let me see if I can get, here I'm really going to hope that your thing's working right, because I am going to try to get my phone mirrored, because I want to show this. All right, so I'm going to try to pull up camera. What was it? The Chromecast. That's camera 8. Hey, this is actually working. I'm so psyched by this. All right, now I'm going to be a real jerk, and I'm going to try to put myself in picture-in-picture on this. Oh, man. Have I mentioned that I really love my new switcher? The ATEM Mini Extreme, man, this is a product that if I could sell them, I would. These are beautiful. All right, so this is Robinhood. This is an investment platform that over a couple of cervezas on Cinco de Mayo, a buddy convinced me to look at because it gave me a chance to actually figure out, well, gee, we were talking about cryptocurrency on the show the night before. But I noticed that for all the jokes about Doge currency, you can't buy Doge on Coinbase. He said, well, you can buy it on Robinhood. And I said, well, Robinhood, geez. Why would you want to, use Robinhood? Aren't they the same guys who played shenanigans with the GameStop trading the other day? He's like, yeah, they were, but they've been pretty good otherwise, and they have a really good app. So it's like, all right, fine, we'll look at it. So let's see here. And someone mentioned it was a focus issue, so I'm going to try to stay exactly where I was, and I just recued the autofocus. So it's possible I've been rocking back and forward in my chair as I've been dealing with things, so I'm very apologetic about it. We should be autofocused now. Anyway, so Robinhood does some neat things about showing the values of things. One of the things I really love is not only how they give you the little odometer, has basically things change over time, but I love what they're doing with stock pricing and coloring. And I have this is just a list of various things I've been watching, and ironically today they're not nearly as involved as they often are. But let's go ahead and pull up. Let's go pull up Apple. Okay. So they do something really interesting with the graphs on it. So you'll notice when I dial in things over a period, you not only have the idea of is it going, red for down, orange for headed down, but not yet below, not yet into anything significant. It goes very dark red if it's really getting clobbered. And then it has levels of green that it uses if it's been going up significantly and so forth. So these are the graphs for Apple over the last X number of periods of time. Obviously, the 1 year picture of them has not been looking too bad. The 5 years been looking great. But they do a really nice job of using this kind of color coding to really make it much easier to see how things are going. Glancing down like a stock watch list like this one, you can tell, okay, yeah, the DIA spider, that's a spider for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Yeah, things are looking pretty good overall. Twitter's looking fine. I like the little micrographs that they're using right here. But color-wise, you can see just based on the depth of the levels of green or red. And again, this is ironically, like you can see, the cryptos have been doing quite badly of late. There's been a lot of Chinese regulation threats and so forth. And so they've really taken a tumble by about 25% in the last couple weeks, although they've rebounded quite a bit since then. Anyway, so they've... but I very much like the idea of how they're displaying. And I'm thinking this is actually something that we might want to look into doing for ComicBase itself. So one of the questions we asked a lot is, what do the different colors of ComicBase, of the different lines in ComicBase mean? So we see some lines are black, some of them are blue, some are red. And honestly, that is almost a straight lift from the old price guide, the price guides of the 90s, where the ones that had the capability to do color printing would make the hot books colored red. And in ComicBase, I believe it's like if the current price is 10% higher than last year's price, it gets marked as red. If it's about the same as last year's price, or at least it's not higher than about 10%, it stays black. And if it's gone down at all, it gets colored blue, as in it's cold, right? Well, I'm not sure. Well, first of all, price guides from the 90s are long dead, and I'm not sure if anyone really gets that reference anymore. The idea of, is this book hot, cold, or indifferent? I wonder very much if it might be more interesting to start using financial types of coding on things, or more importantly, to offer people the choice of classic comic base encode, color coding, hot, hot, cold, or neutral. Financial reporting type, coding of different levels of hotness and coldness, which give you more of a feeling, of just this thing's really hot, this thing's really going down. It's going down little. It's trending down subtler. It's trending up subtly. Having like a list of, say, 7 or 8 different colors that we employ for that sort of thing, or frankly, offering people the choice of doing nothing at all. Just everything's black. I don't like the color coding. Leave me out of it. Let me know what you guys think. It's an idea that, it's funny because once you see it, employed on an app like Robinhood, you're like, that's really slick, and immediately I'm thinking, we could absolutely adapt something like that. So let me know what you think and if that's something of interest to you. Let's see here. All right. Ed from Canada says, condition drop down list my comic base does not have CGC grades as option, only restored CGC grades. Yeah, you can do that. Let me show you how to get that in comic base right now. Sorry, we're taking a brief detour into a tech question territory, but that's why we are here. If I can get my mouse pointer to show up on my other screen, I will show you how to get to exactly what you're looking for, Ed. All right, so let's go to screen number 2. I'll go ahead and annoy everyone by putting my thing up here. If you go up under Setup and go to Grading, what you will see is a list of all the grades that currently are in your copy of ComicBase. Now, there's this new feature we introduced in ComicBase 2020 called Grading Sets. Click on over to that. And what you can do, if I can bring it onto the right thing, is you can check off which grading sets you use in your collection. And so in this particular live stream one, you see it's got, a couple of restored CGC ones that are, actually there are items in that collection which are of that grade, and so it's always going to show those regardless. But you see it only has one listed. It doesn't have all the restored CGC settings. But you do see a full set of CGC grades right there, and you'll see that the CGCs are collected over here. If I'd said, oh yeah, I do a lot of restored CGC grades, and I check them over here, you would then, once I close this window, you'll see that it would instantly grow the full set of restored grades. And I could do the same thing for CBCS grades, PGX grades, standard, restored, blah, 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 blah. Basically, check off the ones you use, uncheck the ones you don't use, and if you've created the grades yourself and are importing them in, by checking and then unchecking them, it'll do a nice thing there where it will actually give you a nice sort order for those grades, because it'll use the preset sort order for any grades that match that are in your collection, as opposed to the one that you probably built in yourself by putting in your setting. Because sort order isn't something you can set yourself, but we can certainly set as a preset. But if you do that, then you see, like, here's the restored CGC grades just suddenly appeared in my list, and then they would also appear in my drop downs if I went and I went to the next title. So that's something you can do. But yes, that's how you would do that guy. All right. Hoarder's High says, I love my ATEM. That's cool, man. I'm curious what you do with your ATEM. That's yeah, this ATEM is the video switcher we're using right now. It's just very, very cool. Okay, so Oro says, I've always feared there'd be a huge legal battle over what the collection is and is really worth, and is it graded accurately if a claim were filed. I think it's a valid thing to always worry about with any insurance thing. That said, we've been hired as consultants and certainly used as evidence in any number of insurance things over the years. And to my knowledge, nobody's ever had a problem at the end. The main thing is that you had to be able to provide evidence that you actually had the book in the grade that you said it was, and then as far as using us as a nationally recognized price guide, that one has never been a problem for anything that we've ever been directly involved in, or to my knowledge. One thing that, on the other hand, is potentially an issue is if I say I have a near mint copy of Marvel Comics #1, a $450,000 comic book, you better frickin' show pictures of that comic book. Just marking it in your copy of ComicBase, putting one in near mint, sending it to your insurance company, and then burning your house down. That could result in legal issues for you. I'm just saying. I'm not a lawyer, but just word to the wise. Where big money is involved, people tend. So anyway, that's what that is. Okay, and Kathy D says, Blue-orange is a color-friendly palette. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm thinking, I think what we're really talking about is semantics of, so I think it's something like 8% of the male population has some form of color blindness. Blue-green, I think, is the most common, which is inconvenient. But one of the ways to handle it is to provide the option to have multiple palettes, so you can more or less say which choice you would want, if any. And honestly, I think the option of including yourself out is a perfectly valid choice. But let me know what you guys think. Okay, let's see here. And then a lot of discussion about fire insurance. I'm going to let other folks read that and check. That's cool. All right, so other things that are interesting, and I think we're getting close to time. I'm going to wrap this one pretty close to on time. I did have a question that came in ahead of time, so I'm going to answer this one, and that is of a question about preferences and the file tool settings. So two questions. First one came in there. It was a general question about preferences, but what I mostly want to say, and this is under setup preferences, is I want to talk briefly about preferences that, if it were me, I would change right away. And so they're not, if you had the program from before, now I can control, like if you install the program brand new, the preferences I would change right away are probably going to be the defaults anyway. But if you ever had a previous version of ComicBase, and most of you guys listening to this right now have, the preferences are going to be whatever they were. If the preference existed in a previous version, it got carried forward in time. Sometimes life changes, though, and maybe what was a great preference before isn't always. So, for instance, if it were me, I would change the check for updates to each time a database is opened, and I would also have it check for interim updates, for this one right down here. I would actually check that, because that way you will get automatically notified when there's a minor update we put out, because we changed our policy of, instead of only ever having any kind of update when it was a pretty big thing, what we're doing now is anytime we fix anything at all is we're putting out an update for people, but we're only forcing updates every so often. So if you want to see all the interim stuff we're doing, including things like that barcode fix I talked about at the beginning of the program, if you say check for interim updates, that's what will actually let you know that there's something new. It could be months before we push it out as an update to everyone else. So I like getting new things, so I would suggest putting that one up there. Let's see what else we got going on here. I would check if for checking for new sales and purchases. If you don't use the mobile app for adding comics and you don't sell on Atomic Avenue, go ahead and turn this off. Set to never, because it'll never, it'll save you half a second launching the program, because you won't have to go out and go to the server and find traffic that will never be there. On the other hand, if you do certainly sell on Atomic Avenue and you do buy, I would set that so every single time it just immediately knocks your inventory out. And then the last thing I would change right away is the default from every version of ComicBase, going back to ComicBase 1 up until very, very recently, was to optimize whenever 10% of the database changed. Optimize is it's kind of the newer version of compact and verify. It's that process that takes several minutes. It recreates all your indexes. It writes a shorter version of your file out, which contains only the active information with none of the slack space that databases tend to want as they work for a while. It used to be also something that, just because Microsoft Access databases really needed compacting and verifying regularly to ensure that they weren't in danger of becoming corrupted if anything strange was happening, that we would always recommend that anytime you've done a lot of changes that you ran through that process. We're currently using a database called SQLite. It's a different beast, and honestly, because Sidekick is going to always optimize your database whenever you back up anyway, because we don't want to send bigger files to our servers than we need to, because transmission speed tends to be very limited on the up end of things. It's always going to get basically compact and verified once a week, whether you do it or not, as long as you use the default settings of Sidekick. So honestly, what I would do is I would turn this to never. So when I'm actively using ComicBase itself, and I'm just opening databases and I'm moving on to other things, I don't have that, 10 seconds to 2 minutes it takes, depending on my hard drive speed, to compact the database. I just never wait for that. So I would actually go ahead and, if it were me, and set it according to your own risk and reward calculus. But I would set that to never and save myself the time. And then lastly, I think the one I would do is I actually go ahead and compress my backup files to save space. It makes them into zip files. Those tend to be a little bit more easy to distinguish from the regular files. When I'm looking through the directories of timestamp backups, there's never any doubt when I'm looking at it which one's my active backup and which isn't. And it has the extra bonus there of it takes half the space to store on my hard disk. So those are the ones for this that I always change. And then lastly, I want to talk about file tools. So we talked about this first one up here. So you go under File and then File Tools. You get this one up here. And questions had come in and said, well, what's all this about? So I talked about the first one already, optimizing a database. So let's move on to that one. Rebuilding lists is the one that I use the most frequently out of this entire database. And what this is these options give you a way to basically recalculate the parts of the database that are subject to any kind of machine interpretation or machine calculation. So, for instance, if I click off series information, it's going to do things like saying, all right, well, one of the things it knows about every series is not just its name, but its name in first name, last name order. So if it's Amazing Spider-Man, there's another version of that stored called The Amazing Spider-Man, which is called its display title. It will recalculate the display titles for every item in the database. It will recalculate things like this next one down here, the list of owned series. It will recalculate when a series is in the in-stock list or not, if that ever gets out of whack. For item information, this is the one that I hit the most. This is the one that tells you, it goes through every item, so that is to say all the issues of all the comics, all the issues of magazines, all the books and books. So that's about 1 million things at this point, so it does take several minutes. But it's going to go through, it's going to validate all your dates, it's going to scrub through all of your notes to make sure that there's no redundant notes in your database, so you won't have a database entry that says something like, first appearance, first appearance of Spider-Man, semicolon, first appearance Spider-Man. It'll get rid of the first appearance Spider-Man one. It'll leave just one. It'll do some cleaning up of stuff like that. But it basically will recalculate everything there is to be calculated. There are hidden fields in ComicBase that tell you things like, if I have 3 copies of a $10 comic book, there's an extended value field, which would then have a value of 30. This gets used for reports to say, show me all the comics I have the most money in, or things like that. It will actually look not at the quantity and the value fields. It'll look at the pre-calculated field to tell what it's going to show up on that report. So anyway, it's a good thing to do once in a great while. Just whenever you're feeling particularly OCD, because again, it'll do a certain amount of just tidying up of little things. So it doesn't hurt to do. It's not needed to do, but it doesn't hurt. And so I would definitely say that's something worth trying once in a while. And if you do this one, because the first one might have implications for character names and creator credits and such, I would use that in combination with this next one down here, the list of contributors, storylines, and notes. So let's go back to the Spider-Man example. If I say first appearance Spider-Man, first appearance of Spider-Man, and just for fun, let's say at some point I'd forgotten the hyphen in Spider-Man, and I just was spelling it as Spiderman. What that will do, if you say to recalculate your list of contributors, storylines, and notes, is it will, whenever you clean up the notes, it's worth going through and having it also update its list of all the characters, so that when you're searching for a character, whether it's Spider-Man or Spiderman, it finds the comics that have that one. So whenever you do an item cleanup and it notices that it has made cleanups that have implications for that, it'll always advise you to, hey, did you want to clean up the contributors? Because it's really good for searching. But because this one takes so much longer than this one usually, like on my computer, takes, I don't know, a minute. This one over here down at the bottom takes like 5-10 minutes. It's an optional thing, and I don't search for Spitterman every day. So if I have the time to walk off, go to lunch, and I just feel like I want to have my database extra fresh and toasty, I'll click both of these ones and then just hit rebuild and go back. And then the final one on here is the pictures list, and it says warns slow because it is slow. It is literally hours. That is, it goes to every single item in the database and says, hey, you got a picture for this? If so, where is it located, how big is it, and so forth. And it pre-calculates certain image settings so that when you go to that title later on, it knows, all right, well, he's got a big picture for this one over here. I can show a big preview icon for it and so forth. And it helps the screensaver, ironically, to know which ones should go full screen and whatnot. Absolutely optional. You don't need to do this whatsoever because whenever you go to a title, it'll take a second and it'll go and recalculate that stuff anyway. Matter of fact, it'll do it in the background. You'll notice as I go to a title, there'll be a little circle down there that'll spin. Let me find one that's long enough. If I go Little Lulu Marges, it's probably long enough you can see the circle spinning right there. And what it's doing right there is, even though it already has the information on my database, it went and rechecked it, and you probably would have seen it in that time, filling in the thumbnails for all these ones if it had the ability to. Anyway, not a bad thing to do, not a required thing to do. So, do it if you feel like it, don't if you don't. But at least once in time, not a bad thing to have done. All right, so let me go ahead and switch back to that. All right, guys, I am probably going to wrap this one soon. Let me just do a quick check of that. And Horace Hyde says, I use my ATM to do the same thing you do. Live streams for 7 people to watch. LOL. Absolutely, man. you go. Greg Hex said red-green is the most common color blindness. Did I say red-green or green-blue? I probably said green-blue. Apologize. Cognitive prompting. I got prompted into giving the wrong answer. So, let's see here. Wow, time flies. That time in the show. Remind everybody that we have a dedicated thread in the CB message boards where you can request topics and demos for the live stream. Right on. And you never did the thing telling us what was all the badges. Wow, that's gonna have to wait for another episode, but we will do that. And let's see. Horace says, so if you transport the file between different computers and you have to run the cleanup on each computer, or is it transport with the database? The value, so if I'm just taking a database file and I'm running it between things, it will have already updated all the individual notes and extended fields and things like that. The things are actually part of the database, but be careful with the picture one, because if I have different picture stores on different computers, so in other words, one computer might have a lot of pictures and one might not. What we'll have done is, if I ran it on the one with all the pictures, it'll expect that it had all those pictures, then it'll go looking for them, so, oh, I guess that's not there, and have to knock them all out again. And so it'll get a lot of false hits, essentially. I mean, it corrects for them on the fly, because the picture information, it's useful for the database to know, but it always double checks it, because the pictures are always changing. But honestly, the picture thing, yeah, other than the screensaver, is the least interesting part of all that. Any of the note cleanups or contributor cleanups, once they're done once, they're good wherever you pass that database around. All right, guys, I think I'm going to wrap it in for now. I hope you're all well, and I will see you on the other side. I hope you guys all have a great, great summer, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.